You are really not one of us and you don't belong here. Go and meet your kind, Connor shouts, his voice dripping with 20 years of hidden disdain. The other 4 men double over with laughter, their expensive suits unable to hide the ugliness of their souls. Jake slaps the table, tears streaming down his face from laughing so hard. Ryan points and mimics David's shocked expression. Noah pulls out his phone to record the humiliation. Alex grins with the satisfaction of someone finally revealing their true nature. David stands frozen, the words hitting him like physical blows. 20 years of friendship, partnership, and brotherhood crumbling right in front of him. Welcome to Tales Within Stories. What if I told you that 5 white billionaires who built their empire on the back of a black genius, a genius who founded that empire, are now literally working as his janitors? This is David. 20 years ago, he saved 5 rich white boys from death. He then conceived and built the venture that would become the Billionaire Boys Club. But once their empire was forged, they looked him dead in the eye and said the 4 words that would cost them everything. You're not really one of us. But David had been recording everything for 20 years. And what he did to them, it's so perfectly calculated, so beautifully twisted, that it'll restore your faith in karma. By the end of this story, you'll understand why Connor Sterling, former billionaire CEO, now cleans David's toilets every Tuesday at 6 a.m. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back to the beginning. Back to where it all started with a broken family and a mother's impossible dream. Detroit, 1995. 3-year-old David Jackson watches his father Robert pack a single suitcase with shaking hands. "I ain't staying in this place to raise that boy." Robert spits at David's mother Sarah, his voice dripping with disgust and self-hatred. "He's just going to end up like every other kid from this neighborhood, dead or locked up." The door slams. David never sees his father again. Sarah works herself nearly to death, 3 jobs, bleeding hands, counting pills, keeping David fed and in school. But here's what makes this story different. Sarah isn't just any struggling mother. She's got a 180 IQ and a photographic memory. She worked at a top tech company before David was born, but racism kept her from advancing beyond entry-level positions. So when David shows signs of the same genius, reading at age 4, doing calculus at 8, Sarah makes a decision that will reshape everything. "Baby," she tells David on his 10th birthday, "God gave you a special brain. But in this world, smart black boys make some people nervous, so you got to be smarter than smart. You got to be invisible smart." She teaches David to code switch, effortlessly navigating between the language and mannerisms of his school environment and his home. But the most grueling lesson is also the most vital: to allow others to claim credit for his ideas, meticulously documenting every instance in secret. Every time they cheat you and benefit from your work, you write it down, date, time, witnesses, Sarah says, her voice heavy with years of bitter experience. "I know it hurts, baby. I know every cell in your body wants to fight back, to speak up, to claim what's yours." Her hands shake slightly as she continues. "But when boys who look like you fight back, they don't just get detention or a slap on the wrist. They get suspended, expelled, arrested. They get labelled as aggressive and threatening. I've seen brilliant black men destroy their futures by demanding credit they deserved." David sees something broken in his mother's eyes, the ghost of her own battles lost. "Your mama learned this lesson the hard way at that tech company. Every time I spoke up about my ideas being stolen, I became the angry black woman. Every time I demanded recognition, I got closer to being fired. So I stayed quiet, stayed invisible." She grips his shoulders firmly. "But you, baby, you're gonna be different. We're gonna let them steal from you, use you, underestimate you, and we're gonna document every single moment. Because one day when you're ready, when you're positioned perfectly, we're gonna make them pay for all of it." David thinks it's just his mama being dramatic, not understanding that she's turning her brilliant son into a weapon forged from her own painful experience. He has no idea she's training him for the long game of survival and eventual justice. Fast forward to Riverside Prep Academy 2010. David's 16 now, Full scholarship recipient, surrounded by kids whose trust funds are worth more than entire Detroit neighborhoods. The 5 friends who will change his life forever: Connor Sterling, Judge's son; Jake Morrison, Senator's kid; Ryan Blake, Oil Dynasty heir; Noah Cross, tech billionaire's son; and Alex Wright, pharmaceutical empire prince. They barely see David as human. He's that scholarship kid, smart enough to help with their homework, not wealthy enough to matter in their social circle. David has internalized his mother's lessons perfectly. Stay invisible, be useful, document everything. When they copy his calculus solutions, he writes it down. When they claim credit for his history project ideas, he notes the date and witnesses, just like Mama taught him. But everything changes on December 15th, 2010. School trip. The bus hits black ice, flips 3 times, catches fire. David wakes up hanging upside down, blood dripping from his forehead into his eyes. The 5 rich boys are unconscious, bleeding, trapped near flames that are growing hungrier by the second. David could save himself. Walk away. Let natural selection handle the entitled. For a split second he remembers every slight, every stolen idea, every moment they made him feel invisible. Instead, he makes the choice that will haunt him forever. One by one, David becomes their guardian angel. Connor's leg is shattered. David drags him through twisted metal, cutting his own hands to ribbons. Jake's unconscious with a head wound. David carries him like the brother he never had. Ryan's not breathing. David performs CPR, literally bringing him back from death. Noah's trapped under debris. David lifts it with pure adrenaline and desperation. Alex is seizing from brain trauma. David holds his tongue, keeps him from choking on his own blood. 5 lives, 1 hero, 0 recognition in the headlines. But while David recovers in a shared hospital room, something happens that changes everything. His mother Sarah, working as a night janitor at that very hospital, overhears Judge Sterling on a phone call. "Thank God it was just that black kid who saved Connor. If it had been another rich family's son, we'd owe them forever. This way, we throw him a little extra scholarship money and everyone stays happy." Sarah records every word, her hands trembling not from nervousness, but from vindication. Her son's training is working perfectly. The first recording of thousands she'll collect over the next 20 years. Recovery brings something David never expected: genuine gratitude that slowly transforms into brotherhood. "You're our brother now," Connor says, tears streaming down his face as he grips David's hand. Blood brother. Forever. For the first time since his father abandoned him, David feels like he belongs to a family. But this isn't just emotional healing. It's the birth of shared ambition. David doesn't just help them with homework anymore. He leads them. His genius mind sees their family connections, their resources, his own raw intellect, and envisions something unprecedented. Late nights in Connor's basement, David sketches out his vision on whiteboards: a unified venture, a conglomerate of their family's industries, powered by revolutionary AI algorithms he's developing. "Imagine," David says, his eyes bright with possibility, "if we combined Sterling's legal network, Morrison's political connections, Blake's energy resources, Cross's tech infrastructure, and Wright's pharmaceutical research, with my AI coordinating everything." The 5 friends are mesmerized. They call it the Syndicate at first, but Connor suggests something more fitting for their privilege: the Billionaire Boys Club. David becomes the undisputed architect. He drafts business plans that make their professors weep with envy. He designs corporate structures that could revolutionize entire industries. He develops AI technology that's 5 years ahead of anything in the market. But while David pours his soul into building their shared future, Sarah continues working as an invisible cleaning lady across all 5 family companies. She hears the parents talking during late-night strategy sessions. "It's good optics having David around," Judge Sterling tells his wife. "Shows the boys are progressive, plus the kid's genuinely brilliant, makes an excellent workhorse." Senator Morrison nods. "David's got natural talent. grateful, hard-working, and he makes our sons look incredibly charitable. He's building their future for free. The parents actively encourage the friendship, not from love, but strategy. They see David not as a co-founder, but as a temporary, invaluable asset. David, blinded by the warmth of finally belonging, puts the patents in all 6 names. "We're brothers," he says, signing with a smile. "We share everything." The 5 friends smile back and sign too. None mention they've already filed separate patents excluding David from ownership of the very technology he created. Sarah records their private celebration. "The little project actually gave us his billion-dollar idea for free," Connor laughs to his father. God, they really are that naive. But David remains oblivious, lost in the intoxicating feeling of family. Sterling Industries launches with David's AI technology. Overnight success turns into sustained domination. David, believing himself to be the founding CEO, works 80-hour weeks, sleeps in the office, bleeds for their shared vision. The 5 friends get rich, very rich. David receives a salary, generous but still just a salary. At first the changes were subtle. Meetings moved without telling him. Conversations that stop when he enters rooms. His office somehow gets smaller during a temporary renovation that never ends. "We can't make you a partner yet," Jake explains, not meeting David's eyes. "The investors aren't ready for that kind of diversity in executive roles. But your family, David. You know we value you." Forbes runs a cover story. 5 self-made billionaires under 30. David stares at their faces, his brothers, beaming from the magazine cover. He's not mentioned anywhere in the article. "You understand, right?" Ryan says when David confronts him with the magazine. "The market isn't ready for that kind of diversity at the executive level yet. Image matters to investors. But you know we couldn't have done this without you. You're invaluable, just behind the scenes." The word invaluable tastes like poison, but Connor's arm around his shoulder still feels warm. David swallows his hurt and chooses to believe in their bond. But the isolation deepens. His access to systems gets mysteriously limited. His original corporate blueprints are altered, his name slowly scrubbed from internal documents. When David notices he wasn't invited to what used to be their weekly strategy sessions, Noah's explanation comes with that same patronizing smile. "Oh, that? Just boring administrative stuff now. Board meetings, legal compliance, investor relations, really tedious paperwork. We didn't want to waste your brilliant mind on mundane details when you could be working on the real innovation." It sounds reasonable. It feels like consideration. But David's stomach twists with a familiar dread, the same feeling he got watching his father pack that suitcase. The gaslighting is masterful. Every time David questions his treatment, they remind him of their history, their brotherhood, their shared trauma and triumph. "We're family," Connor says whenever David pushes back. "Family doesn't keep score." Meanwhile, Sarah spends 10 years building her invisible army. Every company, every meeting, every crime committed by the 5 families gets documented by a network of janitors, security guards and secretaries, the people nobody notices. But she's not ready to strike yet. Because the real betrayal, the one that will justify everything she's planning, is still coming. And she doesn't have to wait long. The end comes exactly 10 years after David saved their lives. December 15th, 2020. Sterling Industries just went public. They're all officially billionaires. David expects a celebration of their shared success. Instead, he walks into Connor's private dining room and finds 5 faces that look like strangers. "David, sit down," Connor says without looking up from his steak. The tone is different, cold, final. David's stomach drops. He recognizes this tone from childhood, the same dismissive authority his father used before walking out forever. "The board has concerns," Jake begins, cutting his meat with surgical precision, "about leadership structure, about representation." "What kind of concerns?" David's voice barely escapes his throat. Ryan finally makes eye contact. His expression could freeze fire. They're asking questions about our diversity initiatives, whether we're carrying dead weight. The phrase hits like a physical assault. Dead weight? David's mind races. He built this. He created everything they have. How could he be dead weight? The investors want credibility, Noah continues, pushing his plate away. They want leadership that looks like real Americans, successful Americans. I am a real American, David says, his voice cracking with desperation. I built this company. I created the Billionaire Boys Club from nothing. Connor finally looks up. His eyes are empty of every emotion except contempt. No, David, you're not really one of us. You never were. Time stops. 20 years of friendship, brotherhood, shared dreams, all of it shatters in 4 words. We tried, Jake adds almost gently, like he's putting down a wounded animal. We really did try to make this work, but it's uncomfortable for everyone now. David's voice comes out broken. I saved your lives? Connor actually laughs, a sound that will echo in David's nightmares. That was high school, David. Ancient history. What have you done for us lately? I built this empire. I created the technology that made you billions. We gave you the opportunity to contribute, Ryan snaps. You should be grateful we included you at all. Grateful. David's voice rises, fury replacing despair. I gave you everything. My vision, my genius, my life. And we gave you a life back, Noah snarls. Without us, you'd still be in Detroit collecting welfare. Alex speaks for the first time, delivering the kill shot. Maybe it's time you went back to your own people. The security guard appears. David, founder of the Billionaire Boys Club, is being escorted out like a common criminal. The severance is generous, Connor says, already returning to his dinner. Don't make this harder than necessary. David looks around the table one final time. 5 faces he loved like family, 5 lives he saved, 5 men who just destroyed him without blinking. I thought we were brothers. Connor doesn't look up. We were never brothers, David. You were our charity case, our diversity hire, our pet project. He pauses, then delivers the final devastation. You should thank us. We turned a project from Detroit into a millionaire. That's more than most of your kind usually accomplish. The words echo in David's mind as he walks away from everything he thought he'd built. 20 years of his life reduced to rubble by 5 sentences and a security escort. 3 days later, David sits in his empty apartment, staring at the walls that suddenly feel like they're closing in. The doorbell rings. A courier with a package that's been sitting in a storage facility for 8 years, with instructions to deliver when David Jackson loses everything. His hands shake as he opens the familiar handwriting. They finally showed you who they really are. Ready to show them who you really are? The impossible floods his mind. His mother died 8 years ago. Unless... He paused. The address attached to the message leads David to a warehouse in Queens. David's hands shake as he approaches the door, his mind rejecting what his heart desperately hopes. A figure emerges from the shadows. Hello, baby. David's knees give out. It's impossible, but it's her. Mama? The word comes out like a prayer. Sarah Jackson opens her arms and her son collapses into them, sobbing like the broken child he's always been inside. But I buried you, David cries into her shoulder. I was there when you died. I held your hand. You held the hand of a woman who was ready to let go of one life to save her sons, Sarah says, stroking his hair. The cancer was real, baby. Stage 4. But I had connections, people who owed me favors from 20 years of keeping their secrets, a hospice nurse who understood what mothers do for their children, a funeral director who knew which battles were worth fighting. She pulls back to look at his face. I was dying anyway, David. But I could die as Sarah Jackson, cleaning lady, and take all my knowledge to the grave. or I could disappear and use every secret I'd ever learned to protect you. The impossible truth unfolds. For 8 years, Sarah Jackson has been building the most sophisticated revenge network in corporate America, using her death as the ultimate cover. Every company, every meeting, every crime they committed thinking nobody was watching, Sarah says, pulling out boxes of meticulously organized files. We were watching, we were recording, we were building cases. 20 years of evidence, 8 years of preparation, all leading to this moment. But why didn't you stop them from hurting me? Sarah's face softens with maternal pain. Because you had to see who they really were, baby. You had to stop loving them before I could teach you to destroy them. She leads him deeper into the warehouse, her hand warm and steady on his arm. There's something you need to see, baby. Something I've been preparing for this exact moment. Sarah guides David to a wall of monitors that suddenly flicker to life, casting an electric glow across the warehouse floor. The screens display familiar faces in familiar places, boardrooms, offices, private clubs where David had spent 20 years believing he belonged. Sarah's fingers move across a control panel with practiced precision. The first video begins to play, and David watches his entire life get recontextualized in real time. The first clip shows Connor at 19, drunk and laughing at a fraternity party, his words slurred but his meaning crystal clear as he tells his friends about the best part of having David around, how it makes them look progressive while keeping their house project in his place. Smart as hell, Connor admits, but David knows where he belongs. The second screen illuminates Jake at 22, his voice smooth and reassuring as he calms nervous campaign donors about diversity optics. They have their token genius, he explains with practiced charm, brilliant enough to be useful but too grateful to ever be dangerous, and certainly not decision-making material. A third monitor reveals Ryan at 25 in a private board meeting, acknowledging David's brilliance while explaining to investors why someone who didn't grow up with generational wealth simply thinks differently about real business. The casual dismissal in his tone cuts deeper than any insult. The fourth screen captures Noah at 27 during an exclusive investor dinner, describing how David's involvement provides credibility with diversity-focused funds, while making clear that executive leadership requires different breeding, a phrase that hangs in the air like poison. On the final monitor, Alex speaks to his pharmaceutical executive father, his voice carrying the cold calculation of someone discussing a business problem. David is getting too comfortable, too demanding, and perhaps it's time to remind him what he is versus what they are. Hundreds of hours of footage unfold across the screens, 2 decades of casual dismissal, systematic exploitation, and calculated betrayal, all captured in stunning high definition. David staggers backward, his legs barely supporting him as the truth crashes over him in waves. Every conversation, every decision, every moment he thought he was part of their inner circle, it had all been performance. But Sarah isn't finished. She moves to another section of the warehouse where filing cabinets stretch toward the ceiling, each drawer meticulously labelled and organised. The financial records her network has been collecting for years reveal a truth even more devastating than the personal betrayal. The 5 friends aren't just casual racists operating in an elite bubble. They're career criminals who've been protected by privilege and power for decades. Tax evasion schemes sprawl across multiple states, hidden behind shell companies and offshore accounts. Corporate fraud has cost investors billions while enriching the 5 friends beyond measure. Environmental crimes have poisoned entire communities, leaving families sick and ecosystems destroyed. Political bribery has influenced elections and corrupted democratic processes. Medical fraud has literally killed patients, trading lives for profit margins. Sarah's voice carries the weight of steel as she explains what David is seeing. These aren't just people with outdated attitudes or unconscious bias. They're criminals who've spent decades hiding behind their family names and inherited wealth, protected by a system designed to shield people exactly like them. David stares at the overwhelming documentation spread before him, 20 years of methodical evidence collection, each piece cross-referenced and verified, building an airtight case against people who thought they were untouchable. His voice barely rises above a whisper as he asks what they're supposed to do with all of this evidence. Sarah's smile transforms her entire face, radiating the quiet confidence of someone who's spent years preparing for this exact question. "They're not just going to destroy these men," she explains. "They're going to take everything they've built and transform it into something worthy of the communities they've spent decades exploiting." 6 months pass, and the 5 friends soar to unprecedented heights. Sterling Industries' stock reaches record peaks while their personal brands dominate media coverage with the unstoppable momentum of corporate royalty. David Jackson has become nothing more than a forgotten footnote in their success story. This proves to be their most fatal miscalculation. Working alongside his mother's invisible army, David orchestrates what will become the most sophisticated corporate takedown in American history. The plan unfolds with surgical precision, designed to systematically dismantle 2 decades of stolen success. Every company under the 5 friends' control suddenly experiences mysterious systemic failures that defy explanation. Key employees submit resignation letters without warning. Critical contracts dissolve at crucial moments and computer systems crash during the most important presentations of their careers. Connor finds himself addressing increasingly nervous board members as Sterling Industries experiences its first significant stock decline in years. He attributes the mounting problems to unfortunate timing, dismissing concerns with casual confidence about weathering temporary setbacks. But luck has nothing to do with the unfolding disaster. Sarah's army is finally stepping out of the shadows, wielding decades of accumulated knowledge with surgical precision. Cleaning ladies who have remained invisible for 20 years suddenly develop perfect recall of every password they've witnessed being typed, every confidential document they've accidentally photographed while emptying wastebaskets, and every compromising conversation they've overheard while polishing conference tables. Security guards experience selective memory lapses regarding building access logs, surveillance camera malfunctions, and digital records that mysteriously become corrupted at the most inconvenient moments. Secretaries begin making seemingly innocent mistakes in filing crucial documents, scheduling critical meetings, and maintaining the regulatory compliance that keeps their employers operating within legal boundaries. As internal chaos spreads through their corporate empire, David simultaneously escalates external pressure through strategic information warfare. He leverages his mother's 20 years of evidence collection, feeding carefully curated intelligence to journalists, prosecutors, and regulatory agencies with methodical precision. Rather than overwhelming authorities with everything at once, which would raise suspicions about coordination, David releases information in measured doses. 1 strategic leak per month builds momentum. 1 whistleblower story per quarter creates investigative patterns. 1 investigation request builds naturally upon previous discoveries. The 5 friends begin recognizing the walls closing around them, but they cannot identify the source of their mounting legal troubles. Jake calls an emergency meeting, his usual political composure cracking under pressure, as he explains his growing conviction that someone is systematically targeting their entire network. The coordination is too precise, the timing too perfect, for these investigations to be coincidental. They respond by hiring the most expensive private investigators, security consultants, and counterintelligence experts money can purchase. $1 million professionals dedicate themselves to identifying their mysterious enemy. None of them suspects the discarded project they threw away 6 months earlier. With their defenses focused on external threats, David sets his final trap through carefully orchestrated personal meetings. He reaches out to each former friend individually, suggesting coffee dates, lunch meetings, and casual drinks between old friends who want to clear the air about their unfortunate misunderstanding. Each meeting takes place in a public location, with perfect acoustics and strategically positioned recording equipment that captures every word with crystal clarity. Each friend, feeling nostalgic and perhaps slightly guilty about how their partnership ended, opens up about their current business challenges with the assumption that David lacks the sophistication to understand the implications of their admissions. Connor confides his concerns about moving certain assets offshore until the current investigations lose momentum, describing these maneuvers as typical rich people problems that David wouldn't understand. Jake explains how campaign contributions sometimes require creative routing to maintain plausible deniability, dismissing these practices as standard political operations that exist in every successful campaign. Ryan discusses the cost-benefit analysis of environmental regulations, admitting that paying fines often proves more economical than actual compliance with safety standards. Noah describes user data as incredibly valuable, regardless of supposed privacy protections, suggesting that monetizing personal information is an industry standard that everyone participates in secretly. Alex complains about FDA approval timelines, hinting at alternative channels that expedite pharmaceutical approvals through unofficial relationships and strategic influence. Each friend trusts David with these incriminating confessions because they still perceive him as harmless, grateful for their past association, and ultimately controllable. Each friend has just provided David with the final pieces needed for their complete destruction. The arrests unfold like a carefully choreographed symphony of justice, timed to the minute across multiple jurisdictions. At precisely 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 FBI teams execute coordinated takedowns across 5 different states in what will become legendary law enforcement coordination. Connor Sterling finds himself handcuffed in silk pajamas while neighbors record everything from their windows. The charges include fraud, tax evasion, money laundering, and racketeering conspiracy. Jake Morrison gets arrested at his campaign headquarters in front of reporters who received mysteriously well-timed tips about the morning's events. Campaign finance violations, bribery, election interference, and perjury fill his indictment. Ryan Blake endures a perp walk from his exclusive country club while his golf partners watch in stunned silence. Environmental crimes, regulatory fraud, conspiracy, and corporate manslaughter dominate his charges. Noah Cross gets dragged from his Tesla in the parking lot of his favorite technology conference. Securities fraud, data theft, privacy violations, and computer crimes fill multiple pages of legal documentation. Alex Wright faces arrest during a pharmaceutical industry gala that's being live-streamed to thousands of industry professionals. FDA violations, drug safety fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, and medical malpractice create headlines across medical publications. The evidence proves overwhelming in every case. 20 years of meticulous documentation supports each charge. Financial records spanning decades provide irrefutable proof of criminal activity. Video testimony from hundreds of witnesses creates airtight cases. Audio confessions recorded with crystal clarity eliminate any possibility of reasonable doubt. The most beautiful aspect of the entire operation is that no news coverage mentions David Jackson's name. He remains invisible, underestimated, occupying exactly the position where he's always been most dangerous. David observes the perp walks from his modest new office, calmly sipping coffee while reviewing scholarship applications from brilliant students who remind him of his younger self. His phone rings with a call from county lockup. Connor's voice carries complete defeat when he speaks David's name, the arrogance and casual cruelty replaced by the hollow tone of someone whose world has completely collapsed. David responds to Connor's accusation with practiced innocence, claiming ignorance about the coordinated investigations that have destroyed their empire. Connor's voice cracks as he insists that 20 years of evidence doesn't materialize overnight, that someone planned this systematic destruction, that this has to be about the company and the things they said during David's termination. David leans back in his chair with complete composure, acknowledging that someone did indeed plan this elaborate takedown, but gently correcting Connor's assumption about the architect. When Connor demands to know who orchestrated their downfall, David reminds him about his comments regarding dead weight. The silence stretches between them before David delivers the final blow with quiet satisfaction. The dead weight, it turns out, had been keeping receipts the entire time. Connor's desperate threat that this isn't over receives David's calm correction that it absolutely is finished. Connor told him he wasn't really one of them, and Connor was absolutely right. David had become something far superior, the person who ended their exclusive club forever. David hangs up and blocks the number, but the revenge is just beginning to unfold. With the 5 founders imprisoned, their corporate empire crumbles like a house of cards built on stolen dreams and broken promises. Sterling Industries stock crashes the moment Connor's arrest becomes public knowledge. The board, desperate to salvage what remains of the company, needs new leadership with intimate knowledge of their technology and operations. David Jackson emerges as the perfect candidate, a former employee with unparalleled understanding of the company's systems, a spotless background check, no criminal record, and stellar references from the very people whose secrets he's been keeping. He acquires Sterling Industries for 15 cents on the dollar, transforming it from a monument to exploitation into a beacon of opportunity. Morrison Political Consulting hemorrhages clients as Jake's corruption scandal spreads through Washington like wildfire. David's mother's network of political operatives, now organized under the banner of Jackson Strategic Communications, steps in to serve the abandoned clients with integrity and transparency. Within 6 months, they vote unanimously to sell Morrison's remaining assets to David's firm. Blake Oil faces environmental lawsuits that expose decades of poisoned communities and destroyed ecosystems. The company collapses under the weight of its crimes within a year. David's Shell Corporation, Green Future Energy, acquires all Blake assets and begins the sacred work of healing the land their greed had scarred, converting every facility to renewable energy production. Cross Technologies drowns in regulatory fines and user privacy lawsuits as families discover how their most intimate data was stolen and sold for profit. David's venture capital fund, Justice Ventures, purchases the company's patents and intellectual property, then develops privacy-protecting alternatives to every exploitative product Cross ever created. Wright Pharmaceuticals collapses under medical malpractice settlements and FDA sanctions as the families of victims finally see justice. David's nonprofit foundation, Community Health Initiative, buys the company's research data and begins developing affordable generic versions of every medication Wright used to price gouge desperate patients. Within 18 months, David Jackson owns every significant asset his former friends spent decades building on the backs of the communities they exploited. But his vision extends far beyond mere acquisition. The families that enabled and profited from their sons' crimes face their own reckonings, learning that privilege cannot protect them from the consequences of generational harm. Connor's family estate faces foreclosure when legal fees overwhelm their generational wealth. David purchases it at public auction and transforms it into a community centre for underprivileged children, specifically kids who look like he did at their age, brilliant minds trapped in circumstances designed to break their spirits. Jake's political dynasty crumbles as his father faces corruption charges and his mother gets indicted for tax evasion. David's Political Action Committee supports their opponents in every subsequent election, ensuring the Morrison name becomes politically toxic, a cautionary tale of what happens when power serves only itself. Ryan's generational oil wealth evaporates under environmental cleanup costs and climate litigation. David's renewable energy companies acquire their mineral rights and convert them to solar farms that power entire communities for free, turning instruments of destruction into sources of life. Noah's tech empire collapses when his father's company faces data theft prosecutions. David's AI startup hires their best talent and develops ethical alternatives to every exploitative technology they created, proving that innovation and integrity can coexist. Alex's pharmaceutical inheritance disappears into settlement funds for families whose loved ones died from Wright's unsafe medications. David's medical foundation provides free alternatives to every drug they use to make unaffordable, turning profit centers into healing centers. 5 family empires, built over generations through the systematic exploitation of communities like David's, completely dismantled and replaced by companies dedicated to everything those families opposed: racial justice, environmental protection, political transparency, data privacy, and medical accessibility. But David's masterpiece of poetic justice is still to come. These criminals typically serve light sentences in minimum security facilities that feel more like exclusive retreats than punishment. Good behavior, expensive lawyers, and early release programs ensure their temporary inconvenience. 2 years later, All 5 men walk out of their comfortable facilities, expecting to rebuild their lives with the same privilege that once protected them. Instead, they discover a world that no longer recognizes their names as anything but cautionary tales. Broke, unemployable, and desperate, they find themselves abandoned by the very system that once elevated them. Their families want nothing to do with their disgrace. Their former friends cross streets to avoid uncomfortable encounters. Their professional networks have completely disowned them. They need work, any work, including the kind of basic manual labor they once dismissed as beneath their station. Fortunately, David's companies are hiring. Sterling Community Center needs maintenance staff. Jackson Strategic Communications requires janitorial services. Green Future Energy seeks security guards. Cross AI Institute needs cleaning crews. Community Health Initiative requires groundskeepers. The positions offer minimum wage, demand long hours, and require hard physical work. But these represent the only employment opportunities they can find anywhere in their respective cities. Every Tuesday at 6 in the morning, Connor Sterling reports to the community centre that was once his family's estate. His assignment involves cleaning bathrooms, including the master bathroom where he once prepared for prep school as a child of privilege. His supervisor, Keisha, is a 25-year-old black woman who addresses him as Mr. Connor with professional courtesy, while ensuring he understands that toilets require thorough cleaning inside and out. Jake Morrison empties trash cans at the political consulting firm built on his family's ashes. His manager, Maria, is a Puerto Rican immigrant whose family was displaced by policies Jake's father championed during his political career. She observes his work with eyes that remember every injustice, every broken promise, every community destroyed by the Morrison political machine. Ryan Blake works overnight security shifts at renewable energy facilities constructed on his family's former oil fields. He guards equipment designed to heal the environment his company poisoned for decades. His supervisor, Joseph Running Bear, is a Lakota environmental scientist whose reservation suffered contamination from Blake oil operations for 30 years. Noah Cross cleans computers and servers at the AI Research Laboratory, developing privacy protection technology. His supervisor, Dr. Lin Nguyen, is a Vietnamese programmer whose personal data was stolen and sold by Cross Technologies during their privacy scandal, affecting her entire extended family. Alex Wright maintains gardens at the medical foundation that provides free medications to patients who couldn't afford Wright Pharmaceuticals' inflated prices. His manager, Dr. Amara, whose patients died because they couldn't access Wright's life-saving drugs, their deaths preventable tragedies born of corporate greed. Every single day, they wear uniforms and take orders from people who represent the communities they spent their privileged lives exploiting and dismissing. Every single day, they perform the manual labor they once considered suitable only for other people, people who looked like David, people whose intelligence they never recognized, people whose humanity they never acknowledged. Every single day they receive paychecks bearing David Jackson's name, a constant reminder of the brilliant mind they discarded like garbage. And every single day they remember the 4 words that cost them everything they thought they owned. You're not really one of us. David sits in his office, comfortable but never ostentatious, reviewing applications for his mentorship program. 500 brilliant children from backgrounds identical to his own fill his desk, geniuses trapped in systems designed to render them invisible, their potential dismissed by people who cannot see past their circumstances. His phone buzzes with a text message from Connor. "Please, my kids need their father." David studies the message for a long moment, then types his response with the measured wisdom of someone who understands the difference between revenge and justice. "Your kids need their father to be a better man. Keep working on that." He deletes Connor's number for the final time, closing that chapter of his life forever. Sarah walks into the office, 70 years old, but moving with the renewed energy of someone who has finally witnessed justice served after decades of patient preparation. "How are our boys adjusting to honest work?" she asks, with the satisfaction of a mother who has seen her son's vindication. "They're learning valuable lessons about respect, humility, and the dignity of all labor," David replies, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who has transformed pain into purpose. And if they decide to quit? They're blacklisted from every company in our network, which, thanks to 20 years of careful preparation, includes most major employers in their respective fields. Sarah nods with deep satisfaction. Perfect. Let them finally understand what powerlessness feels like. She hands David a new file, thick with documentation and photographs. Next case. An oil executive's daughter in foster care. Genius-level IQ, already developed 3 patent-worthy innovations while living in her car. Every scholarship program has rejected her because she's supposedly not college material. David opens the file and sees a face that mirrors his own at 15, brilliant, angry, invisible to a world that refuses to recognize genius when it doesn't come wrapped in the right package. "What's her name?" he asks, already reaching for his phone. Maria Gonzalez, 17 years old, currently sleeping in a car she built herself from salvaged parts. David dials immediately. "Get me the head of our scholarship program. We have work to do." If this story resonates with you, if you believe in the power of the underestimated and the strength of the overlooked, subscribe now. Because David Jackson's story isn't just entertainment, it's a blueprint. Every week we share real stories of people who refuse to accept the limitations others placed on them. People who documented everything, prepared methodically, and transformed their pain into power. Hit that subscribe button and join a community that sees genius everywhere, especially in the places society teaches us to ignore. 20 years ago, 5 privileged boys thought they could use a black genius as their project and discard him when he became inconvenient to their narrative. Today, those same 5 men clean toilets and empty trash cans for companies dedicated to lifting up every person they once stepped on to reach their stolen heights. David Jackson didn't just achieve revenge, he delivered justice, and his work is just beginning. The final scene opens in a community center where Maria Gonzalez waits alongside 4 other brilliant teenagers from forgotten communities. The cycle begins again, but this time, David teaches different lessons to minds that society has written off. "Remember this above everything else," David tells them, his voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who has turned an unjust world upside down. "They will underestimate you because of how you look, where you come from, what your parents do for work. Let them. Invisible people see everything, and everything you see, you document. Because one day..." He pauses, his smile reflecting the satisfaction of promises kept and justice delivered. "One day, you'll show them exactly who you really are, and they'll understand that we are the ones who build, who earn, who innovate, and who see everything. We are the ones who transform the world. Don't let this be just a story. Make it a movement. Subscribe, share, and help us find the next David Jackson. Because somewhere out there, another brilliant mind is being underestimated, and they need to know they're not alone. Hit subscribe and become part of the network that sees potential everywhere.